It takes no courage to put on the Senate floor a bill that is supported by 90+% of Americans. What takes courage is to look a special interest group in the eye and say, enough is enough. It is time to act.
The House Judiciary Committee is expected to return from recess early to consider new proposals to curb gun violence. Congress is not in session this month, of course, but Democrats, as you saw there, did hold a press conference yesterday calling on Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to take up House-passed legislation on background checks. Two people familiar with Democrats' plans tell the Washington Post the House Judiciary Committee will consider proposals to restrict high-capacity magazines, institute red flag laws, and potentially legislation on hate crimes. Joining us now here in New York, member of the House Homeland Security and Veterans Affairs Committee, Democratic Congressman Max Rose of New York. He's a veteran of the war in Afghanistan and the recipient of both the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. Congressman, great to see you this morning.
Good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. Do you have hope that there'll be some movement in the wake of El Paso and Dayton? Do you see something different here that you haven't seen in the past?
Well, this all depends on Mitch McConnell. You know, as we look at this issue of domestic terrorism, it's a complicated, multifaceted issue. It's going to require increased resources for law enforcement. Certainly, DHS has to double down on their focus. We have to make these global white nationalist organizations, give them the label of terrorist organizations, which will give us enhanced surveillance capabilities. But we can't lose sight of the fact that we are the only nation in the world that is dealing with this problem. Domestic white nationalism is something that we're seeing across the globe, but this is just happening in America. Kids right now have to show courage to go to school. People have to show courage to go to their faith-based organizations. Mitch McConnell, though, is being a coward in the halls of Congress. And it's absurd. And the American people, I believe he's going to suffer the consequences for this when he goes before his own voters in 2020.
There's some reporting this morning, Congressman, that the White House and President Trump himself, in fact, have reached out to people like Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, who's been at the forefront of the conversation on guns, willing to do something on universal background checks. The president has said that time and again. Do you believe the president actually wants to do something at least on universal background checks, or is it just lip service?
Right now, we have no reason to... We don't see evidence of that. But I'm not going to give up hope. Okay, you know, this president, I don't believe, has any inner core beliefs here. So he'll flow with the wind. What I am concerned about, though, is Mitch McConnell and the fact that he is enslaved by the NRA, enslaved by the Republican base. That's really the decisive point here. If Mitch McConnell shows courage for once in his career, and he has the ability to save lives, it is as simple as that. I do believe the president will sign legislation.
So, Congressman, there are a confluence of factors that might lead to the idea that we're going to get something this time around. The NRA is weakened. It's got its own leadership problems. It's got its own financial issues. The president and his team have been meeting with Senators Toomey, Manchin, as well as Murphy, as far as we understand. And yet, at the same time, even the legislation that is under discussion, the president has made it absolutely clear is not going to include anything on assault weapons. Until we get to assault weapons, legislation, even on background checks, isn't going to stop the kinds of attacks that we've been having recently. Is that ever going to happen, or is that conversation just dead in America?
Well, amidst all these mass shootings, we should not lose sight of the fact that we also have thousands of people dying in inner city America, often from handguns. That much of that will be solved by this issue of universal background checks, because these weapons, we see people dying in Brooklyn, are flowing from down south up the iron pipeline. But certainly, this issue of mass shootings will not be sufficiently addressed without the assault weapon ban, and I fear that this is an issue that will have to be settled at the polls. Again, go back to the point that I made earlier. This is a global phenomenon, this issue of white nationalism, this issue of extremism, but this is only happening in America, and I believe the fact that the weapon that I carried in Afghanistan, the weapon that my fellow soldiers carried throughout the global war on terrorism and prior, is readily available in America.
You needed weeks of training in order to be given the responsibility.
Well, and beyond the training, though, let's think about what an assault weapon is designed to do, what an AR-15 is designed to do. It's designed to quickly shoot rounds rounds that enter the body, do not leave it, are designed to ricochet around the body, cause massive harm, have extended ranges, and then we also have the problem of extended magazines. These should not be sold in the United States of America. This is quite simple, and it's statistically proven to have a result.
So, Max, look into the camera and tell hunters who want to buy an AR-15 to go hunting deer or pheasant in the fall the difference between hunting and using an AR-15 as you use.
Well, let me make this simple, though, because this is, at this point in the United States of America, this is not a policy issue. This is a cultural issue. So we are not going to allow for this issue to cause a divide between rural America and urban America, Democratic America, Republican America. All I am simply saying, and I do not believe this is an infringement of the Second Amendment or an attack on American culture, which is often connected to gun ownership. What we are merely saying is that when it comes to weapons of war, which assault weapons are, they have no place to be sold in the United States of America. It will save lives. It will save lives, and it's got to change. Enough is enough.
So you've heard, Congressman, as I have from many people who say it's a constitutionally protected right. An AR-15 is not for hunting, it's for personal protection. And I've heard veterans say, these aren't weapons of war. I never carried an AR-15 in Afghanistan or Iraq, playing maybe a semantic game with that. What do you say to them?
Well, that's absolutely a semantic game. You know, an M4 is the military variant of an AR-15. At times, what is the only difference? It's aesthetic, a collapsible buttstock. There is no silver bullet when it comes to addressing any of these issues. And we should take a step back as we look at these mass shootings. This administration has not paid nearly enough focus to the issue of domestic terrorism. DHS has disbanded its internal office that was designed to address this issue. Currently, there's no statute for domestic terrorism. The State Department hasn't labeled these organizations terrorist organizations, which would provide us with the empowerment to truly address those who are aligned with these organizations before they commit a crime, which is absolutely critical. We have a roadmap for what we have done throughout the 21st century in regards to global terrorism. We have to readjust it towards the way in which the threat has changed. This threat is not going away. We cannot wish it away, and it requires for this administration to rise above politics and to focus on public safety. This should not be hard.
So let me just ask this quickly. Why won't the administration do this? Why won't they consider white nationalism domestic terrorism? Why won't they do it?
I do believe that it comes down to politics, which is unfortunate. I think that they appear that some of their base would be offended by it. And all the while, though, people are dying. All the while people are dying. I have the utmost faith in our public safety law enforcement infrastructure. When we empower them, when we align them with what the actual threat is today, they can address it. But so long as this administration becomes still focused on proximate political issues, they'll continue to show cowardice, while other people, as I said prior, have to show courage during normal daily activities. Our kids today are afraid to go to school. Not in this country anymore. It has got to change.
And no less than the director of the FBI testified last month that white supremacy is at the core of most of their domestic terror arrests. Plots they've thwarted, the majority have been based on white supremacy. Before we let you go, the number one issue, the bridge. Verrazano Bridge. How's traffic on the bridge? That was your big campaign issue.
Look, I am confident that an issue that we've recently passed in the halls of Congress for split tolling on the Verrazano Bridge, and I thank you for allowing me to speak about this for a moment, will start to make some positive effects on the traffic commuting nightmare on Staten Island. But there is one point. I know you're rushing off to commercial break. It is an abject, unbelievable failure on the part of the Democratic Party that we have not passed an infrastructure bill out of the House yet. We ran on this. We spoke about it for 18 months. It's clear that the President and Mitch McConnell will not show the courage to pass an infrastructure bill, but we got to put one right in front of them so we can ease the commuting nightmare on Staten Island, South Brooklyn, as well as throughout the country. We got to get back to work.
Keeping the focus on local issues, that traffic on the bridge.
It's not a local issue. It's a national issue, buddy.
For
it's
your
a national
constituents,
issue, man.
it sure is. Congressman Max Rose of New York, great to see you.
Thank you.
Still ahead, the famous poem on the Statue of Liberty reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses." But United States Immigration Chief Ken Cuccinelli seems to think it should say something else. Morning Joe's back in a moment.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.